Hey, what's up, Unbroken Nation? And I want to start there because you said I feel like I was a leader. I was a leader, but I wasn't getting my stage, my opportunity to be myself. You even mentioned like they wanted you to be a carbon copy of this other pastor. What was, when did leadership become evident in your life? Why has it held true for you? And how have you been able to leverage and use your words to be an effective leader?
That's a good question, Michael. I feel like I became first aware of it in high school. I noticed I had this ability to take people from very different cliques in my high school, and we could hang out because I was there. I was like this person who bridged the gap. And then if I was sick or out from school, those people would have nothing to do with each other. And then when I'd come back to school, they'd be like, "Oh my God, thank God you're back. I could not stand so and so when you were gone." But then when I was there, we could all hang out, have an amazing time. And I thought that's so interesting. When I'm around, people are able to gather and congregate, connect, and converse. But when I'm gone, they can't stand each other. And I realized this influence I had. And so I try to channel that in my youth group. Like I try to be a leader as much as a woman was allowed to be, or a young woman was allowed to be, but I still very capped. So I tried to work within these really strict confines. I could share my story to the group, but I'm not allowed to teach. I can speak in front of my fellow peers, but I'm not allowed to preach. It was like so many technicalities and so much legalism. And I'd always try to wiggle my way around. Even in Bible college, I I knew I was meant to speak on stages. And so I'd say, I'm going to be a motivational speaker. 'Cause I'm not allowed to say I wanna be a preacher, I wanna be a pastor, I wanna be a teacher, that's not allowed. But if I say motivational speaker, some audiences will let me speak to men and women. So I kept trying to find the way to fit the appropriate spot that people had available for someone like me. And even at that mega church, I was like a leader, but still just they were trying to make me a carbon copy. And at some point I said, am I gonna keep trying to be who they need me to be, or am I willing to step out into the unknown and become all that I'm able to be without the confines? And it's terrifying, but it's also thrilling because you actually have a shot at creating life on your terms when you're no longer trying to live by someone else's.
Yeah, that's so true. And I heard you think about this for a moment. Like all of the greatest people in sports, they all have one thing in common. All of the greatest people in leadership, they all have one thing in common. All the greatest people in business, they all have one thing in common. And that's that you always hear this old adage about this idea that belief is everything. And
Mm,
I think so often, and especially in dogmatic environments, belief is stripped of you. How are
mm,
you in this time? Because, here's what I think is really fascinating about your story is you're in this position of trying to make the world a better place in the way that you see fit, while also simultaneously kind of trapped in this system and fighting against it to share your voice and your message while simultaneously being on fucking food stamps. How, like, what is happening in your life in this moment where you're like, I'm gonna trust myself and go for this anyway? Because a lot of people will hear that and be like, man, that's rock bottom. Like, why bother? And I hear that and I'm like, that's the perfect time to shift.
mm. Yeah, I think for those of us who are born for greatness, we know it at a very young age. I remember being in late elementary school, early middle school, pretending to do TV commercials in front of my hallway mirror because I knew I was meant to be famous. And like, I felt that way, I'd act that way. But once the word got out to my friends and close friends, everyone laughed. Like, they saw it as vain, as shallow, selfish, silly to want to be famous. And so I quickly snuffed that dream down and hid it. And then later, but it's always there. We always know when we're meant for more. And it's not for everyone. And that's the thing is like, you have to figure out for yourself, is greatness meant for you? Do you want to go to the next level? Do you believe more is available for you? Because if you do, it is. If you don't, it's not. Like we get to create the realities we want to live in. And so once I started to surround myself with people who were living out their power and potential, I saw representation. When I saw women online making a lot of money, I was like, oh shit, does that mean I can make a lot of money online too? So I look for people who emulated the life that I wanted to have. And the more I surrounded myself with them, the more I listened to the way they talked about themselves, the way they believed in themselves. It started to be almost like an infusion of their belief into me, of my own self belief. And I was like, if they can do it, surely Nikole can do it too.